guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for tonight's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. As per usual, I have my wicked candle in here, making the whole room smell like caramel apples. So I'm going to be reading some of my emails and some of my Instagram DMs from you guys, and then I will probably be filming another video tonight and doing more of Reddit stories. So this one is from my email, and it's titled, "A Witch That Stalked My Grandparents." The story takes place in Colombia. My maternal grandparents were young newlyweds and had moved into a new town near my grandpa's job. My grandma did not work at the time, so every weekday she would stay home while my grandpa went to work. In Colombia, everyone usually keeps their front doors open during the day and sit outside chatting with our neighbors. A few weeks in, my grandma had become acquainted with her immediate neighbors. One day, she was busy tending to the house and had the front door closed. There was a knock at the door, and she opened it expecting a neighbor she knew, but it was an older lady she had not seen before. She was in her roughly early 60s. She introduced herself and said she was a neighbor from a few houses down the street. My grandma invited her inside and offered her some coffee while they talked. The lady asked my grandma where she was from, if she lived alone, and other personal questions. My grandma didn't think much of it at first. She just figured it was a nosy neighbor. My grandma started noticing the lady more often when she would go for walks or just hang outside with the other neighbors. Days later, the lady came knocking, asking if she could borrow my grandmother's wedding veil for her granddaughter because the one they had was torn and they didn't have enough time or money to get another one in such short notice. My grandma did not want to, but felt bad for the granddaughter and let the lady borrow the veil anyway. The next time the lady visited, she told my grandmother that she had some books that could make my grandpa fall more in love with my grandmother and stay faithful. She also mentioned things she could do for my grandmother if she ever wanted to get revenge on someone or to get rid of someone. My grandmother, being a devout Catholic, got very uncomfortable and told the lady she wanted nothing to do with witchcraft, asking her to turn the veil and please don't come by again. My grandmother told my grandpa what happened, but there was not much else that they could do about it. The next time the lady returned the veil, she had a yellowish stain and a good amount of hair deliberately tied on a section of it. My grandmother, not thinking much of it, threw away the clumps of hair and just washed the veil. For some context, my grandparents' house had 2 floors. Their room was upstairs and their kitchen was downstairs. The doors to the kitchen were very heavy double French doors that locked. And every night they would make sure to lock the kitchen. One night, both my grandparents woke up to a commotion as if someone was cackling downstairs, while pots were being thrown and plates shattering. My grandpa grabbed his machete and went downstairs with my grandmother trailing behind him. All the noises stopped instantly, and the kitchen doors were still locked. Once opened, they saw that everything was still in place, and no one was actually on the bottom floor. From then on, my grandpa would either have my grandmother accompany him at work or drop her off with her trusted neighbor until he got back home. On random nights, they would still hear similar noises or noises of someone walking on the roof as if things were dropping from the roof. They asked neighbors if they were hearing the same things, but none of them had. Eventually, my grandparents moved towns again and did not tell anyone where they moved to. One day, someone knocked at the door again, and it was the same lady asking why they moved. In the span of a few years, my grandparents moved 3 other times, and the lady would keep finding them. They would also occasionally hear similar noises in the new houses. The last house she came to was a completely different city, and she finally stopped showing up after my grandparents baptized their first child. That is so creepy. That is so much nonsense happening in that. Like, I would not put up with somebody stalking me. You moved 3 towns away and she still found you? That is messed up. I would definitely be filing a restraining order against this lady because that is fucked up. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That was really freaking creepy. So this is another email from another person, and they've actually sent me stories in the past, and we're going to read more of their updates. I told you I would email you if I remembered more of my stories, and I actually did just remember a few that I find will correlate with each other. The past 3 years has been really hard on my family. My biological father had passed away, and mine and my twin's birthday is August 28th, and he passed away shortly before our birthday. I normally forget my birthday, but the year my real dad passed away, I had a dream about him where he came to tell me something that I wouldn't forget. He said, "Happy birthday, sweetie. I love you so much." I found out later on that day my identical twin had the exact same dream. She was even upset where the dream gave me peace. Even after death, he was able to tell us happy birthday. The very next year, my 2-month-old nephew passed away. I kid you not, the day before my dad's 1-year death anniversary. It really tore my family up, but I wouldn't let anyone see me cry. I was trying to be there for everyone else. I always had a feeling when my sister was pregnant, he wasn't going to be here for very long. I don't know why, and I can't explain it. Maybe just my intuition. He passed away due to a hernia that my sister had taken him to the hospital for. A couple months after he passed away, I had a dream about him and my best friend that's been dead for about 20 years. I've had one dream about her, so I knew this was her coming to me. In my dream, she said, my nephew was okay and he was in heaven and everyone is taking care of him, that he knows you all love him so much and it wasn't anyone's fault. I asked her where she was and I wanted to see him, and I started looking around. She told me, while I'm here because he doesn't know how to show himself just yet, I'm still teaching him where he is. When I told my sister and mom, they both started crying, and apparently they were very worried if he was actually in heaven, if he was being taken care of. So that's a really sad story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so sorry that you've dealt with so much death and trauma in your life. That is just so sad. Oh my goodness. The next story that I'm going to read is another one from my email, and they said, when I was roughly 7, my mom and her second husband bought their first house with the help of my granddad. After my nan passed, my mom wanted him closer, so he sold his bungalow and we moved into the house together. I was over the moon that my granddad was my everything. I know it may sound large, but keep in mind, homes in England are built in brick and walls are much thicker. So what I'm about to explain on a smaller scale than you can imagine. As you walk into the house, you first have the stairs on your right and my granddad's living room on the left. The room next to that was the main family room. The door facing you is the kitchen, which is a rectangle shape that leads to an extension of a small square to where the stove and kitchen sink is. Once you reach this part of the kitchen, to your right is the back door. Outside the back door is a shed facing you. Then you turn to the left and it's a short 3-foot path to the steps leading to the garden. If you follow the wall of the houses on your left-hand side, as you walk in the garden towards the fence, it leads you to a space under the house that years ago we would use to store wood and coal. The stairs. The stairs go up in an L shape. Once you reach the square at the top, you turn right, and the first door on your left is a box room, which is a small room. That was my granddad's bedroom. Next to his room would be a door facing you was my mom's room, which was the master. Then it was mine and my sister's room, and the door next to that, which faces my granddad's bedroom door, is a bathroom. Now that you have the layout, I want you to keep in mind how homes in England are built. First floor is concrete floors. The second floor is wood due to access to the pipes. We had a fireplace in each living room and no central air. We have what is called a radiator to heat the rooms. Now that we have the layout, let's start with the true events that happened at the house that I'm referring to in this story. To start, me and my sister had bunk beds. We took turns on who got to sleep on the top. Kelly had won the fight and she was on the top bunk bed that night. I could not tell you the time, I just knew it was after 11 p.m. because the landing light was turning off, which is what my mom does when she goes to bed. I woke up feeling ice cold, which was strange because it was the middle of summer and a hot one at that. My curtains were very thin and we lived on a busy main road. Our bedroom faces the road, so we would get the light from the street lights, which I enjoyed because my room would have a nice glow to it. Our closets were not built in. They were wooden with 2 doors that open outwards and 3 drawers underneath, and the doors faced the bed. Our bunk beds were against the wall with our heads on the same wall as the window and feet towards the door. The door was closed, yet it looked as if something was sliding its head through the door just to peek inside. I assumed my eyes were playing tricks on me, but then a large 7-foot shadow figure walked through the door, walked past the bed, and climbed on top of our closet. Looked towards the bed, and all you could see was extremely unnatural, toothy grin around this black mass of a figure as it was crouched down, and then it disappeared. I spoke in a very shaky, sheepish voice, asking my sister if she saw that. I was holding back tears in fear that I would sound crazy, not knowing how to explain what I just saw. She said, "Yes. Can I please come sleep with you?" This was the first night we ever shared a bed. We didn't tell our mom about it, and I guess this was mistake number 1. For years following this, we did not see it again in person. However, every single night for 4 years, I would have the same reoccurring dream. In my dream, I am in flight mode, and it starts with me running out of my bedroom until I reach the square at the top of the stairs, as if something is chasing me. What or who, I still don't know 25 years later. All I know is I was running for my life. Once my foot hit the square step, I would jump down the stairs out of fear of losing my footing on the last 3 steps, stumbling and getting back up quickly and putting my hand on the front door to open it, and then I would wake up. Same dream, never any longer, never any different. I don't know why. All I know is I would wake up with bruises on my shins where I lost my footing in the dream with no explanation of how they got there. When my granddad got sick is when things started to take a turn for the worse. He had multiple heart attacks each time. I would be the one to find him, and we would be rushed to the hospital and be back within a week. He had been approved for a heart bypass, which was to extend his life by 10 years. Of course, this made me over the moon. Before his surgery, I would tell him that he was going to be walking me down the aisle when I got married and be a great-grandfather. At this time, I was 12 going on 13. After my granddad's surgery, while in the ICU, he caught MRSA when it first broke out and they had no antibiotic for it. My granddad's wound was not healing on his chest. It had an infection and there was nothing that they could do. Once he was stable enough to come home, his independence had been stolen from him. He now had to sleep in his living room because stairs were just too much of a strain. He tried to stay strong for me, but I could see the light dimming. Everyone said my granddad was only holding on after my nan died for me. The sicker he got, the worse the activity became in the house. Our boxer dogs barked for no reason. The bottom of our bird's cage would randomly drop out, making the bird fall to the floor. We checked all the clips that they were secure, and my mom even bought new cages, and still we had the same issue. When my granddad went to the hospital again, I knew in my heart that it was the last time. I struggled and I couldn't bear to bring myself to go see him. Every other time I was by his side, but I was being selfish and thought that if I didn't go, he wouldn't die, because he wouldn't die without saying goodbye to me. I regret that choice to this day because he suffered waiting for me. When I finally built up the courage to go, I said my goodbyes, and the second we left the hospital, 20 minutes later, my mom got the call. The hospital had to call the bomb squad because my granddad's electric shaver that needed to be plugged in but was not, was going off and they thought it was a bomb. My mom said it was his last laugh on his way out. After my granddad's passing, my mom became very depressed, which is to be understood as she has now lost her brother, mother, and father. However, this was not a normal depression, whatever normal is for that. She became very withdrawn. I moved into my granddad's bedroom and I felt much closer to him that way. A few months went by and my mom's depression got worse. At this point, she had been admitted to a psychiatric ward after seeking help from our family doctor. 2 nights after my mom left, I experienced what people call sleep paralysis. I, on the other hand, call it demonic control. I was lying in bed, wide awake, after just plugging my cell phone on the charger. I laid down and all of a sudden, I was extremely thirsty out of nowhere. So dry, my tongue felt like sandpaper. As I started to get up to get a drink, I was pushed back down onto the bed. I hear what sounds like a dinner party going on with glasses clinking and chattering among groups of people, and I smelt cigarette smoke as if somebody was standing next to me smoking. I was being held down the more I strained my eyes to see what the hell was going on, and the less that I could actually see. All I could see was a lot of shadow and hands holding me down until I was finally able to let out a scream, then a hand suddenly covered my mouth. I was terrified. Then out of nowhere, it all disappeared, like a poor, cruel joke. I know I was awake. I never went to sleep that night, so it can't be explained away with sleep paralysis. Let's fast forward to many similar events. My mom is still sick, but now home. My stepdad has left the home and is mostly me and my sister has turned 16, which is the legal age in England. She spends most of her days with her boyfriend. However, my house was the house that all of the teens would go to, and her friends still come over on the weekends. I enjoyed that they did because when people were around, my mom was more normal. When other people were not around, she would spend all of her time in her room in some kind of daze. She would mumble intangible words while writing poems on the walls in her room. A woman who was so proud of her house, she decorated the house every 6 months, was now writing poems on the walls about mirrors. Just so you can get a glimpse of why I was so happy to have other people around. In our living room, as you walk in the door, there's a 2-seater sofa facing you, and the side of that, we have the house phone on the wall. Facing you next to this is a fireplace, then the TV. Facing the TV is another sofa. We had carpets in our living room, and one night we were all in the living room. I was sitting on a 3-seater, and my mom and my sister's friend, Gary, next to the wall, between the TV and sofa was my friend Jenny. and the two-seater was my sister's friend Emma and her boyfriend Dan. We were all laughing and joking around, mocking each other. It was all fun and games until we started to hear knocking on the living room window. Keep in mind, you would need a ladder to be able to knock on the window. The guys all went outside to see what was going on because it was very dark, and they found nothing. This happened 3 times, when on the 4th time, only one of them went outside to see, and everyone else was still in the living room. Then all of a sudden, the carpet started to lift up, as if a gust of wind was underneath it. Gary came from outside, and this was happening, and his face was white as a ghost. When the carpet lifted off the ground, the direction it went was towards the window. We don't understand how this happened because it's never happened before, and the carpet was on concrete floor. As it headed to the window, a door opened in front of Gary. The door that no one had been able to open in 5 years that we had lived there. And he said in the darkness, he could see something on the roof of the space crawling fast toward him. Needless to say, he never spent the weekend at our house after that. I know people ask, why didn't you guys just move? Well, for one, I was a kid. So not like I had control of anything. My mom had lost her job after the mental breakdown, and her ex-husband, who did not pay the mortgage, had financially screwed her in court to the point that she was refinanced to pay him off the amount owned by the courts. That and my mom was the only person who ever felt comfortable in the home. I know this is a long one, but I promise you that the amount of events we've experienced could not be placed in one, most likely a novel. This being said, I will tell you the last event because we moved. Because this one made me scared and laugh at the same time. I'm now 14 and my mom has started dating again. We will call him Steve. Now, Steve was very much a skeptic and would laugh off anybody's stories about the events going on in our house. Until one day, I was late home from school and I opened the front door to my mom cussing me out. Confused, I asked what was going on and she came out of the living room and said, "Keep your music off." I explained I had only just gotten home and she looked at me confused. She explained that the Westlife CD season in the sun was playing on repeat for a very long time on full blast. I put my bag down and I went to investigate to see if Jody had stopped by to collect some things. When we looked at the CD player, we noticed it was still on top of my mom's closet, unplugged. We looked at each other, very confused, but also having that, okay, we may know what's happening here. We go downstairs to see Steve to explain what the CD player was not plugged in, and I looked to my side and see the CD is sitting in the window. My mom looked at Steve and said, "Explain this away then." Shortly after, me and my mom went to the corner shop 8 doors down to get stuff for tea. By the time that we got home, Steve was standing in the hallway, confused and shook up. My mom asked what was wrong with him, and he replied, "The house proved me wrong." My mom started laughing and asked what happened. He explained that during the time that we were gone, he kept hearing music, as if it was playing on an old vinyl with very dated 40s and 50s music. He would try to get closer to the sound to see what it was, and it was as if somebody moved the player into a different room, and he was unable to locate it. One moment, it would sound like it was coming out of my granddad's living room, which no one went inside since he's passed. Then he would open up the door, and it would now sound like it was upstairs. My mom looked at him and asked if that was all that happened. He looked at her and said, "I don't want to talk about the rest." I still don't know what he had seen, but we moved in with him by the end of that week. By the time I hit 16, I moved into my own flat, where I met James, the ghost, but that's for another time. This was 2004, when people were just starting to become content creators on YouTube. Me and my friends wanted to join the fun. As we were recording in the hallway, behind me, we saw someone watching us. If I can locate that old YouTube account, I will post it with my next story. And that's how they ended their update. Oh my God, thank you so much for sending me that. That was amazing. That was a very long story. And I love it when you guys send me really long emails like that because I get to read really long stories for you guys. And I love it when it's all a cohesive story and it's just so fucking weird. That whole house sounds terrifying. I'm glad that you got to move and I hope that your mom is okay now. Ever since you guys moved, has she gotten better? Does she still have the issues that she was facing while she was in that house? I wonder if the house was contributing to her having mental health issues. I'm very curious if there was like a dark entity that was going on in there that was making your guys' life living hell. Thank you so much for sharing. That is such a creepy story. The carpet lifting up and like the black shadow that your friend saw when he was outside is just so weird and eerie. But thank you so much for sharing that. This is where I'm going to end the video because I need to record another video right after this so that I have more content for you guys this this week. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys did enjoy this video and you guys made it to the end of the video, please leave me your favorite animal emoji in my comments down below. If you guys are enjoying my 31 days of uploads, feel free to leave me a comment down below and like this video so that it helps me boost my video on YouTube and the algorithm picks us up. And if you guys have any scary stories, any let's not meet stories, any personal scary stories or creepy stories in general that you want to share with the channel, feel free to message me either on Instagram or on my email, and I will definitely read them as soon as possible. But thank you so much, and I will see you guys at the next one. Bye.